Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bendigo Bank MCDFNL Footy Show for another week. After our barnstorming start to the season last weekend, we're back on the screen for yet another week. Sean Kelly's my name. Once again, Sammy Gower's joining me. Sammy, welcome back.
Thanks, mate. Glad to be here again.
And we've dragged the boss in as well, the operations manager of the MCDFNL for his first Footy Show appearance this year, Scott Carey. Scotty, welcome to the screen, mate. Welcome back.
Thanks, Shawnee. Good to be back, mate. And good for another year.
Very much so. Now, the season, of course, started off last weekend with our season opener game between Navarre and Carisbrook, and it was Navarre getting over the line by 14 points in what was a fairly tight game for Scott, but also a fairly scrappy round one style game as well. It wasn't the best footballing display, so to speak.
Yeah, you're right, Sean. It was an absolute cracker, I thought, for a season opener and a grand final rematch. It was probably everything you expected. And
correct.
Bodies flying everywhere. It was hard early. It was a bit scrappy. It's going to be the same with every game this week, I suppose. But certainly, I reckon Carisbrook had a jump on Navarre early on. I think a bit of inaccurate kicking probably cost them a 3 or 4 goal lead at quarter time. A couple of easy shots, and you just felt Navarre were thereabouts and finally worked themselves into the game a little bit. But it still went goal for goal for probably the rest of the game, and it wasn't until that last quarter where they kicked a couple clear, and that was the margin. So it was a fantastic season opener.
One thing we're going to do when we review games this year, 3 main talking points out of each game. We haven't discussed this because I've just thought about it just now, so it's not so much putting you on the spot, but 3 main talking points out of this game. Number 1, Scott, Liam Cunningham going down in the opening 5 minutes of the game with what looks to be a pretty serious shoulder dislocation.
Yeah, it certainly was. It didn't look good. He took a while to get off the ground, unfortunately. We wish him all the best in his recovery with the shoulder. But from all reports, I don't think it's as serious as it could be. I don't think there's too much tendon issue around the shoulder. So hopefully he only just had 6-8 weeks and they get him back in the business end of the season, I suppose.
Because we know how crucial he was last year, obviously kicking 70-odd goals last year and being the runner-up leading goal kicker for the league.
Yeah, and probably showed a bit on the weekend. As soon as he went off, they probably did lack another target there, and he probably is worth 2 or 3 goals a game.
Well, point 3 gets us on to the other target, but point 2, before we get to that, Daniel Parkin, his first half he was the best on ground by a mile in the first half. 3 goals, which was like 10 on the day, and just showed that if he's up and about, Navarre is still going to remain a force this year.
Certainly is. I'm not sure what Carisbrook were doing on the weekend. I think they just let him run around a bit, and he's probably not the bloke to let do that. Because like you said, he went forward, he kicked goals, he went in the middle, he kind of just ran his own show, and I think clubs throughout the year need to be aware of that, and I wouldn't be letting him run free.
Point number 3, where was Big Nath? We hyped the man up last week. We wanted to see him come back in. He would have created that target that we were talking about with Liam Cunningham going down. And I believe, young Mr. Gowers, you might have an answer to where was Big Nath, because we heard that he was at a wedding, wasn't in the wedding party even or anything like that, but we believe that it was a member of your family that was being married.
My sister's wedding, Big Nath. I got to that instead of showing up for the Redbacks. Heard the beer was free and decided to skip the game and come to the wedding instead.
That's poor form. There's a couple of photos of Nath at the wedding on the screen just a moment, and just a real sloppy sort of rig going on there too, so needs to sharpen that up before they get on the field next week.
He does. He looked sharp early on in the day, but as the night wore on, things got worse for Big Nath.
Yeah, it's always the way, but looking forward to seeing the big man back on an MCDFNL field next weekend. Switching our attention before we look at this week's games, talking about the announcement that was made at the season launch last Friday night, a cracking night up at the Maryborough Highland Society. Our Interleague coach for season 2015, it was pleased to announce that Luke Tracy from the Carisbrook Football Club will be coaching our Interleague side this year. Scott, a fantastic appointment for the league.
Certainly is, Sean. Luke's been fantastic the last few years as coach at Carisbrook, and also been an assistant with the Interleague side the last couple of years, so he's got plenty of experience, and I think it's a fantastic appointment. He's got a lot of respect from coaches and players around the league through his time footy at Carisbrook. So, look, he's excited about the challenges ahead. Certainly putting together a squad with a couple of new players into the league this year and watching their results over the first couple of rounds. And we move into Bank and District Footy League on 23rd of May, Shawnee, which will be a fantastic game, and it's a chance for the league to push towards that top 20 leagues in the state and enhance our reputation.
So it's the Bank and District Footy League we're playing at, as you said, May 23rd at Princess Park as well, so we're at home again this year. You know a little bit about the Bank District Footy League?
I do. They're the district league around my hometown in Warragul, so hopefully we get a bit of inside knowledge there and we can do a bit of homework on the players and come prepared for a cracking match.
So LT's already got some systems worked out. When are we looking at having squads, do you believe? Obviously, a bit hard. There's been one game of footy so far for the year. So has he got a rough indication of about when we'd be looking at getting training squads out?
Yeah, certainly over the next week or so. So we'll get into round one and get a few games out of the way. Obviously, a bit of inside knowledge, having played against some of the players over the previous years, we can still lock them in or look into their inclusions into the squad over the first couple of weeks. It's probably those first one or two rounds for the new players that we probably need a couple of games to look at, but certainly Luke's going to have a couple of assistant coaches for the Carnival, and I think he's spoken to those, and they'll be announced shortly as well, but they'll get the chance to look at a few players over the first couple of rounds and give some feedback to Luke.
So very much a watch this space on that, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have more information about the MCDFNL's Interleague squad and the WorkSafe AFL Victoria Country Championships coming out in the next week or so keep an eye on the MCDFNL website. Time to look at this week's game, Sammy, starting up at Avoca taking on Denali. Very interesting game, this one. A couple of teams that there's been a couple of ins and outs, especially Avoca. I've seen a few go out the door as well, and I believe you've actually got a bit of an exclusive for us about a departure from the Avoca Footy Club that may have happened in the hours preceding the filming of this show.
I do. Ex-Avoca coach Adrian Pilgrim, been at the helm of the Bulldogs for the last 3 years, I think.
Yes.
Gone to arch rivals Natty.
Wow.
Signed a clearance last night.
Signed a clearance.
Signed the clearance.
Can you confirm that, operations manager? Did the clearance come through this morning?
Clearance is pending online, Sean. He hasn't been ticked off yet, but there's still time before the weekend.
I can tell you Natty will be scrambling to get that one through. That changes things a little bit because Avoca, as you can see, had already lost a couple. The Bowl Shellick Wilshire's gone to Bunningong, Murray Bond going out, Mitch Kennedy going out, Tommy Nankervell going out, Brad Schiltz going out. Put Pilgrim into that mix as well, and there's a fair few going out the door at Avoca, and Denali might start favourites in this one despite finishing on the bottom of the ladder last year.
Yeah, that's probably Avoca's top 5 or 6 players gone from last year's side. New coach in Jamie Bridie at the club this year.
Who's a good operator.
Good operator, and they've got a lot of ins, no
doubt
about that. Taylor Hall back from North Ballarat last year.
Yep. Good stories about Michael Henningsen coming through as well. Apparently he's played some good football.
Hayden Slater from Maryborough. So they do have some good players in, but yeah, I don't know whether they'll be able to match their performance last year.
You're tipping?
I'm going to go with Avoca, only because Denali finished so badly last year.
Scott, do you have a tip for this game?
Yeah, look, I'm going to stick with Avoca as well. I think a couple of their ins, especially with Taylor Hall from North City and even Jacob Nicholson coming from Richmond Centrals, which is pretty good footy down in the VAFA there. So, Look, I'm going to go with Avoca. Denali do have a couple of kids back from their under 17 and a half side a couple of years ago that played in the grand final. So they're fantastic kids and might need a couple of games to get going. So I'm going to go with Avoca.
Yeah, good to see Justin Laird and Matthew Gibbs, the ones that you were talking about back at Denali. I think Justin was the leading goal kicker in the 17s 2 years ago, and Gibbsy was right up there in the best and fairest count as well. So they'll add a bit more structure and a bit more depth to Sean Smith's Eagles this weekend. Sean Smith clearance coming overnight as well from New Orleans. So could see the high flyer on the park at some stage. That'd be very interesting to see.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Moving along, Lexton taking on Campbell's Creek out at Lexton tomorrow. Really big game to start the season. Lexton, when we talk about top clubs, they've flown under the radar a little bit this season. They are going along just nice, and add someone like Jacob Spalding on the list who has had some really good VFL experience and put him into a midfield that's already got Jimmy Templeton, Berry Power medalist Damon Asplin and blokes like that. It's a real feather in Lexton's recruiting cap this year.
Certainly is. Mitch Kennedy as well coming across from Avoca, as we mentioned. Geordie Egan from Maryborough. Can run. So yeah, that adds even more to Lexton midfield depth, so it's hard to see him losing this one.
I agree. Campbell's Creek, Scott. Just a couple, obviously, Sean Smith leaving the club to coach Harcourt this year, has taken a couple with him, Joel Smith, Adam Pollock, Sean Moss, Aaron Murray, blokes like that played some senior footy there. They've got a couple of good ins, Campbell's Creek, but you just feel that at this stage Lexton would start favourites.
Yeah, certainly, Shawnee. Lexton have showed that after the last couple of years that they are going to be contending up the top, and Campbell's Creek do have a bit of work to build up. They have done that the last couple of years, I reckon, especially with their juniors coming through as well. It's been a major focus, and they've done that very well. So, yeah, Lexton too strong for me, Shawnee.
Yeah, Lexington for mine in this one as well. Speaking of Shaun Smith, the team that he is taking over this year, the next one we'll look at Harcourt taking on Trentham up at Harcourt tomorrow. As we mentioned, Shaun Smith bringing in the host of players from Campbell's Creek. Joel Smith and Adam Pollock will slot very nicely indeed into that side, plus a couple of others looking very good. Reece Keogh from Barwon Heads, Brenton West from Port Arlington have played some good footy in their time as well. So Trentham, not really too many ins and outs. Brendan James from Lansfield, Daniel Smith from Romsey, Ross Maloney have targeted the Riddle District clubs around them in the area as well, and Matty Traynor and Sean Harrison going to Kilmore, though, are a couple of pretty big outs for them. But good to see Cal Wellings as well, Scott from Trentham, make his TAC Cup debut last weekend, which is absolutely fantastic to see for a bottom age player.
It certainly is, Shawnee. It's been great to watch Callan develop over the last year or so as well. He come up to far North Queensland for our trip up there against AFL Cairns.
Yep.
That footy played well up there, and he's moved in the Rebels and played a game the other week, and he got 78% of the game, which is fantastic, and got a taste of it, so that's fantastic. I think we'll see him in the Trentham colours this week. But yeah, fantastic to Callan, and well done to him, and good luck to him this year and future games.
Yeah, there's some really good juniors coming up at Trentham, but looking at tomorrow, Sam Gowers, Harcourt, I feel will run out in this one favourites.
Yeah, looking at the players Shaun Smith's brought with him from Harcourt, like you said, Joel Smith, Joel Smith, Adam Pollock, Sean Moss, Aaron Murray, all probably amongst Campbell's Creek's best last year. We know Shaun Smith's won a couple of flags with Harcourt in the past, so I think they'll be happy to have him back.
I reckon they will as well. And you're tipping Harcourt?
I'm going to go for Harcourt.
Scotty?
I'm going Trentham, Shawnee.
Trentham?
I think,
boy.
Yeah, I think they had some pretty good games last year, and they did take it up to a few of the top sides as well. They were never really completely out of their depth, and I think their ins this year, they're probably, I reckon, another 8-goal better side than they were last year. So I think it'll be a close game, and I'm going to go Trentham.
Yeah, obviously the one thing you know that you're going to get from the Clayton Scoville side is that they will be competitive every time they run out on the park. So very interesting game. I'm sticking with Harcourt with this one as well. It's round one tipping's a mug's game, because a lot of times you're going on paper and you're going on ins and outs, and blokes you're looking at reputation you haven't really seen them play. So there's every chance that some of these selections could be quite wrong this week, but we'll put our hand up for that. Game of the round this week, I believe, without a shadow of a doubt, out at Hedges Oval tomorrow. Royal Park taking on the Gowersless Natty Bialaba for the first time in many years. It's a changing of the guard down at Natty with the glove not in the back pocket in the twos, but this is going to be a ripping game, and Royal Park have gone out and, boy, have they recruited in the off-season.
Yeah, like we saw last year, Royal Park were probably the big success story of 2014. Rose up the ladder nicely, and look at their ins this year, and they've got a massive list of ins.
Yeah,
blokes from Bungaree in the Central Highlands Footy League.
Who played in the senior premiership as well, so some handy types.
Yeah, Murray Bond from Avoca.
Can go, we know that.
Firepower up forward. Taylor Stewart will be back from that knee injury that he suffered last year. So yeah, they're going to be a pretty hard team to beat this year. Obviously, I'm going to go for the Swans, but that's just hard overhead.
Tell us a little bit about the Swannies this year. You were down there last night at training. How are they shaping up? Obviously, we heard about Adrian Pilgrim looking like he'll come into the side, but tell us about some of the other inclusions for the Swannies, please.
Michael Columbro and Emmett Smith coming across from Maryborough.
Good running back, Emmett Smith, too.
Good running back.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't associate running with Emmett's name, but he's certainly a very clever footballer.
Didn't get that one at all, did it? Just straight through to the keeper. NFL fans out there will know what I'm talking about.
I don't think there's too many of them.
No, I don't know about
that. Jared Bates, a new assistant coach at the Swans as well, coming across from Sandhurst in Bendigo. Pretty good runner, so he'll add a bit more dash to the Swans lineup this year.
So things are looking good there. So you're tipping Natty, Scott. Which way are you going, please?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Natty as well, Shawnee. I think, although plenty of ins for Royal Park, it might just take them that round or two to click and get used to each other's games. And I think Natty are probably a bit more settled over the off-season, so I'm going to stick with them. I'm
going to buck the trend, and I'm going to pick Bushy in this one as well. Time for them to deliver, obviously. There's been a lot of talk in the pre-season. They delivered well last year. A lot of talk coming, not necessarily out of Bushy, but around about them joining that Navarre, Carisbrook, Lexington kind of triumvirate amongst the top teams. If they're going to do it, what better time to show it than at home in round one against a team that has been top four in the last couple of years. Moving along, having a look at the next game, Talbot taking on the Maryborough Rovers. Big game as always, big rivalry, Sammy, between these two clubs as well. And our mate Sherman takes the helm as senior coach at Talbot for the first time.
Yes, he's probably been after the top job for a few years now, but they've finally handed the reins to him. And Talbot have done some massive recruiting as well. Big list of ins there. Liam Balsher returns to the football field after a couple of years powerlifting. So he'd add some muscle to their...
Powerlifting?
Powerlifting.
Wow.
So he'd add a bit of muscle to their midfield, you'd say. A couple of big outs for the Hawks, though. Rowan Prentice gone,
yep,
and Anthony Tatchell gone. So it'll be interesting to see how their new side shapes up.
Will be indeed. Maryborough Rovers looking very solid. A couple of blokes coming back into the side from Carlton Linton, Braden Goreski, and blokes like that coming in. Scotty, Matty Beats and Adam McLean. So you're always going to get another improvement from the Rovers. And again, much like Clayton Scoble coach side, Scott Sellers side is the same. They're always going to have a go.
Certainly is. And yeah, they have been solid improvers. I think the last couple of years certainly been building. And look, yeah, I think Toll are going to be too strong. I think they are pushing for that, probably those last 4 spots in the 8 this year. I'm not sure whether they can contend with the top 4, but I think they'll be just a little bit classier than Rovers on the weekend. Should get the job done.
Matty Smith, how's the shoulder? Obviously, it hampered him a little bit last year. He'd been talking up during cricket season that he had sore shoulders because you reckon he carried the team in the grand final. But you can tell us a little bit more about that because you're on the same side as him. But I think in all seriousness, the shoulder's going okay. It hampered him a little bit during cricket, but I think he's up and about.
Well, somehow it didn't hamper him in cricket. He won the fielding award even though he couldn't throw. So I don't know if he's...
How did that happen?
I think he voted for himself throughout the year. But nah, I think Matty's moving well. I think he's got the troops firing as well. They've had a fantastic pre-season, like every club says. But yeah, they're going well. So I'm still going to stick with Talbot.
Your tip in this one, please, Sam?
Going to go for the Hawks as well.
Yeah, Hawks for me as well. Last game this week being played on Sunday out at Maldon. Maldon taking on Newstead. Bit of a local rivalry here, and liking the look of Maldon from at least the ins and outs list this year. Sean Burchell, a huge inclusion back into the team, Sammy.
Yeah, last year you would have gone Newstead hands down, but this year a bit of reversal of fortunes. Like you said, Sean Burchell back into their side. Him amongst Hayden Kelly and Tom Kane in their midfield makes Maldon a bit of a different proposition.
And Josh Hutchinson coming in from Creek as well.
Yeah, a couple of former Berry Power medalists into their side makes a big difference, and a lot of players out the door at Newstead. So I'm going to go for Maldon in this one. Yeah,
interesting looking Newstead side this year, Scotty. No Daniel Christmas, no Mark Ramsey, no Ethan Ford, blokes like that have been linchpins there. And obviously Nathan Webster coming in as coach and a bit of a new game plan for them to get used to as well.
Yeah, that's right. It does hurt when pretty much your spine goes out of your side. Ethan Ford was fantastic in the middle for him last year. Yeah, lots of outs. I think Newstead are still going to have plenty of class. They have had some good juniors the last couple of years, especially in the under 17.5, and played in a couple of grand finals. But yeah, I'm going to go with Maldon with this one. I think just a couple of handy ins. I think they'll be right to go.
Yeah, I agree. I concur on this one. I'm going with Maldon as well. I like the look of them towards the end of the year last year. Even though they didn't have a great year, they were always running the games out and bring some class into the side, like Birchall and like Josh Hutchinson. And it could be those couple that just tip them back over the edge. That's the footy show for this week, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Firstly, Scott Carey. I know obviously busy day leading up to the proper start of the season. So thanks for taking a couple of minutes out to speak to us.
No worries, Shawnee, and good luck to everyone for the whole season.
And Sammy Gow is just coming on, dropping bombs and giving us exclusives about player movements and everything, mate. Good to see you got your nose to the ground as always.
Glad to be back, mate. Back into it this weekend.
Sam Barrett.
Sam Barrett, really?
No.
Get some glasses on you.
I don't really like him, so no.
No, I do notice the glasses you wear don't have any lenses in them, so it could be the case. That's all we have for the Bendigo Bank MCDFNL footy show for this week. We'll be back next week with more news, talk and stories from around the Maryborough and Castlemaine district, football and netball league.